if you find yourself with a camera in your hand and you want to learn how to use it, please subscribe to this channel, like the videos, comment down below what you would like to learn more about. The intellect, the ability to see, and as we consider it in our day, in our culture, the heart being a seat of emotion. Photographers. My editor asked me if I was going to do a video on photographers from history, particularly those that I like, and it got me to thinking. It would apply to this channel in this respect, that these are images from. I've studied images from the 3 photographers that I'm going to mention, and I've dug into a little bit of the work over the years, and I'm fascinated by aspects of what I've seen of these individuals and some of what they're most noted for. So let's get into it and look at these 3 individuals and what they did for the controversially around the turn of the 1900s, 20th century, late 1900s. People weren't really considering photography as an art form. Much like perhaps today, people wouldn't consider photographers that only know digital photography as artists. They just don't know the side of film that some would argue is necessary. But while I've kind of come up in between film and digital photography, I love film photography. I grew up doing film photography, having it developed and learning about the developing process. But I really grew up in the time where digital photography was a growing component of the art photography period. So these 3 individuals, some may have lasted into the 21st century, living wise, but most of them were born or were in the early 20th century. Ansel Adams, he's known most for his landscapes, especially of the western side of the nation. His images of Yosemite Park and different parts of it, Yellowstone. I love his artistry and his photography because of how he handled the massive amount of area in his photographs that were generally in focus. It's one of the areas that I believe we would do well to study how he achieved that great of a focus in using the hyperdistance focal length aspect that we talked about some time ago. He was masterful in being able to capture scenery and landscapes. The second photographer is Alfred Stiglitz, Stieglitz. Again, that's Stieglitz. I really appreciate, he was a master in photography himself, but perhaps not a lot of people know about him because one thing, he was one of the first that was controversial in this aspect of pushing that photography is an art form, and a lot of people said no, it's cataloging history, but it's not going to be art like painting and all these other forms. But he said it, he stood by it. But because of that belief he had and how strongly he lived in that belief, I appreciate his standing by it and being a promoter of other people's work. That being a character trait of someone is selfless, because he wouldn't, by promoting other people's work, be generating anything for himself. So it was quite selfless for him to be able to promote other people's work. And finally, this artist not just comes with something he believes, but he comes with a statement that perhaps would help us kind of study into what we do and why we're doing it. Henry Cartier-Bresson, his work, mostly by his, I think it was a published work, but then also his whole expansive, what's the word I'm looking for? I just lost it. I was reading up more on it because of my interest in it, but he had a specific expression and yeah, I'll think of this after the video stops. But he had exhibits. Thank you. Wherever that came from. Thank you. The word is exhibit. He had an exhibit set up specifically for what he said photography was really meant for. And it's called the decisive moment. He has a lot of parts and aspects to when and how photography should be captured. And that's what when you see something happening, and just before it happens, and sometimes just after it happened, there's a point in which it captures the viewer's attention. And I think we all not only would do well in learning from photographers of this caliber in this time frame, and a little bit before. One of the first photographs of a U.S. president that was taken was of John Quincy Adams. And if I'm not mistaken, that was in the early to mid 1800s. I'll have to look up that history again. But the capturing of history you could call it photojournalism, the capturing of landscapes, for instance, the capturing of the images of Mount St. Helens before it erupted in 1980, and then again after it had erupted, looking at the devastation that volcano had as it had erupted and eroded not just the side of its own mountain peak, but creating what is now called Crater Lake and the devastation of the hillsides around. There's a massive amount that photography does, not just in documentation, not just capturing that, quote, decisive moment that Henry Cartier-Bresson described and did so well in his photographic exhibition, but the method in which they used their artistic eye, their expression, and how they captured that for the viewer, and something which still thousands of people are enamored by and take time to stop whatever they're doing and go to an art exhibit and to see what these artists captured. Yes, I call them artists, not just photographers. And to close out this video with a quote from Henry Cartier-Bresson, he says, "To take a photograph is to align the head, the eye, and the heart. It is a way of life." And that's not purely just intellectual to be intellectual, but if we want our work to be as grounded, as captivating as many of these artists' work is, then we need to find something by which we can add to our photographs the ability of capturing the imagination and captivate the viewer's attention. As having worked in photography and with marketing mindsets and learning more about what draws a person's attention, there's a marketing term that your ad with images needs to have stopping power. In other words, that means that you need to give your viewer who's scanning past something in our day on social media, TV, any other medium format, anywhere on the internet, your ad with its photograph needs to be captivating enough to cause your viewer to stop more than that 1/10 of a second and go, that caused my interest. What was that image? What did they say in connection with that image? So if we're going to draw people's attention more than just the core group of people that like what they see in us and have a lifestyle of spending more time on something to look and to be concerted and again, I lost the word for it, intentional about things. Our world is getting more and more fast paced and even faster in pace than it has previously. So that is part of why creating an image with stopping power is so key. And especially for us as photographers, if we want somebody to take notice of our work, we need to create those images that have the intrigue and the quickly explained view enough to go, whoa, I didn't see that way before. But then looking at it has so many other layers and depths and intentionality, that's not right, intentionality behind it, and how it's lit and its style, its design. It just needs to be layered on layer, but not to the point that I typically do, which is hiding everything else. But the aspect also of what Cartier-Bresson said of aligning the head, the eye, and the heart. In other words, the intellect, the ability to see, and as we consider it in our day, in our culture, the heart being a seat of emotion and passion. It's catching somebody's eye and causing them to go and stop and think, and perhaps they get lost in some of their thoughts because what they see in this photograph reminds them of something in their past. So all this great information, photographs, if you don't have some of these artists to go back and look at their work for inspiration and to learn details and things about it, I encourage you, stop right now. Go do a Google search or search your favorite search engine for the best photographers in the world, in your country, of a certain style, and learn from them. It will have a good, and I would say full direct impact on your skill, your technique, your style, perhaps not taking on their full technique, but adding it to yours. And I think it'll have a great benefit, and you'll see your photography improve because of what you're learning from these individuals. Many different nationalities, backgrounds, and I did list 3 men, but there are many women in photography who have had a profound impact, and many of them wartime journalists. One of them was a wartime journalist during the Second World War as Allied air combat was made, and then the air dominance over Moscow, with photographing what was taking place. And often these photojournalists were allowed in to photograph things that people weren't allowed other places. So not just the lives of these individuals and their work, but you find a lot of history as well, taking these tacks back and learning what they did and how they did it, and seeing what their quality photographs were as they did these things. So thank you so much for watching. We have enjoyed bringing some of this history, and I really enjoy talking about some of my favorite photographers of history, of note of some of their work that I look at and study myself to improve what I'm doing. And I certainly hope that through this video channel, it gives you a greater depth of things that you can go study and learn from, and it adds value to your photography. And if it does, we would love a thumbs up. If you're not yet a subscriber, please subscribe and drop us a comment down below as to what you would like to hear more of, and perhaps we can delve into the different venues and things that photographers of history were involved in, and a little bit more about what they did and how they did it. If you want to learn from what photos have been taken, whether current day or in history, there's a lot of things to learn for the different aspects of photography and how the camera is to be controlled and set. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.